All right. Hi, this is Curt Barone,
And Brad Pinsky.
and we're here for another edition of Fire Law Roundup for July 15th of 2024. Brad, go ahead.
Well, let's start with just condolences and recognition of the true heart of a firefighter with, as we know, the attempted assassination on past President Trump, where behind him a firefighter, approximately 50-year-old firefighter, past fire chief, apparently dove on his family when he heard the shootings. He was shot and killed. I think that more than exemplifies the true heart of a firefighter, but obviously, Curt, and my condolences to that family in a very heroic attempt. Once a firefighter, always a firefighter, I would say, and that was impressive and unfortunate, of course. Okay, well, let's go from heroic to blatantly just stupid. Kentucky, we have a Kentucky firefighter. I don't know if it's a volunteer or career, but I think it's career.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. Some of the media is reporting it as a volunteer. Irrespective, he's got a fire department T-shirt on,
Right.
and he is pulling a stunt.
Which was shockingly, right, caught on camera, where he's hanging out the window for a couple of miles, right, in his shirt. And, this is, again, a height of stupidity. I'd say if it was true, but you got a video of it, right? When we do things and we're doing things the public may find distasteful or not brilliant, just don't wear your fire department shirt, but you're holding yourself out as a member. Now, that brings up, okay, what other off-duty conduct is impermissible? And let me do a little soft sell here, because if you've enrolled, as many departments are signing up now to enroll in Curt, our new must-have policy service, one of the first policies that people are getting is, and that you would get if you subscribed, it talks about code of conduct and has an off-duty conduct section and would address this. So,
and when we get to uniforms too, this is another thing that when you're drafting your uniform policy, in the event that you have your career department and you have uniforms, but even volunteer departments, they have their dress uniforms and things, and you put limits on what you can do when you are projecting to the public that you are a member of this organization.
Yes. And think of the logic behind it, right? Not only it has that doing something, let's call it distasteful or not wise, while wearing your department shirt, not only does that reflect badly upon the department, but also imagine if somebody starts choking, cardiac arrest, something, while you're standing in a bar on your fifth drink in your department shirt, and somebody's like, oh, there's a firefighter, help.
And we've had that here in Rhode Island. We had a fire department sued where it was a volunteer department, but a member was in the bar when someone was injured, and they had their T-shirt on, and the fire department ended up being sued in conjunction with the member because the member was representing that he was in fact a member of the department. And was he performing on behalf of the department? He wasn't dispatched, but on the other hand, someone needed help and he attended to the person. So there's consequences. And I'm not saying, you prohibit people from wearing T-shirts and that. I'm not saying that, but there's consequences.
Yep.
There's consequences.
And the worst part is the department gets to disavow you, right? Saying you weren't acting on our behalf, but that doesn't stop a lawsuit against you personally. So if this person hurt somebody or anybody hurt somebody, or, right, while representing themselves as a member of the department, which is that's your only intent, right? When you're wearing a shirt, I want people to know that I'm in this department. I think you're leaving yourself in a very bad situation. But as to the department, you need a policy that addresses this exact type of thing so that you can take action or hopefully prevent it from happening.
Yeah, you don't want to find yourself in a situation like this where you look at your rules and regulations and you've got no ability to discipline the member, or no ability to even, take action to get them to change his behavior. So,
right. And as you always say, the first point of a policy is to prevent the conduct, not have to deal with what happened because the conduct happened.
And there's a training component there as well. And this is something that I would hope a fire department at their orientation or basic first day of the academy, you go over the consequences of being in uniform and whatever it may be, acting stupid. Another thing is drinking. And, I think I have yet to attend a firefighter funeral where there has not been firefighters in uniform drinking. And it's sort of inevitable, and trying to prohibit that, I don't think is realistic, but we've got to understand what happens when you've been drinking and you're in uniform.
Oh, parades.
Right. And something happens, like you suggest, somebody starts choking or whatever. So now you got a choice. I'm either going to be sued for being impaired and administering first aid. I'm going to be sued for not coming to the aid of someone. I'm there in uniform, but I've been drinking. So it just creates some problems. This is what we should be talking about day one of the academy before things get very far and people can think about it.
And look, just to give one example, we'll move on, because the policies that we will propose, right, will address this. We'll address the uniform, but it's also preservation, because remember the fire, I think it was a fire chief, African-American fire chief in maybe Texas. He was at FDIC in Indianapolis in his Class A uniform, doing nothing wrong. He was
I forget where it was.
Right. And he takes a picture with the Hooters girls, which by definition is not a legal violation, but they suspend him for some time, 6 months or whatever, because he was in uniform and they found it improper. Well, my two comments are, one, was there a policy that even addressed that? And two, was it really improper? But nonetheless, if we instill the mentality through a policy and through training, parades, my standard suggestion and how we draft policies is, at a parade, that's fine, but take off your coat, take off your badge, bring a different shirt, whatever it is. You're not going to go out, walking around St. Patrick's Day in your fire department shirt. It's a bad idea. So anyway, okay, same topic, but let's go to New Haven, Connecticut. Our good friend Frank Ricci.
I know all the folks in this, and I feel horrible about it. This is just this is the front office of a metro fire department suing each other to resolve a problem. It's not good.
And the lawsuit was characterized. Okay, so look, here's what happened, right? An assistant chief in New Haven sues a lot of people, right? Basically the entire front office plus the union president, etc. It was alleged or believed that the lawsuit was nothing more than itself weaponizing the legal system. Frankly, I think the legal system is weaponized, period. But that the allegations that all the defendants were threatening this assistant chief and trying to undermine him and interfering with his employment, and any event, it was all, he lost at the trial court, and now withdrew his appeal for whatever reason, right? He came out with a reason saying, just for my family sanity and all that. That may be, who knows what the reason is or isn't.
Well, one of the things I noticed that early in my career, I was not planning on being an attorney. And one of the things that I realized shortly after I started practicing is the stress that a lawsuit puts on people, whether you're right? You and I know that, okay? Yeah. But I don't think the average firefighter understands that. And it's not just the people being sued. Certainly the people being sued, there's a level of stress that goes along with that. But it's on the plaintiff as well. And, that's something that until you're actually involved in litigation, you don't really understand. We understand it because we see it day in and day out. But it's a life-altering experience to go through. And some people file a suit, and then once they're in it, they're like, you know what, this isn't worth it. It's not worth the stress. And I think that's probably playing a role in a case like this as well.
Yeah, no question. No question. I always have conversations with plaintiffs and say, are you sure you want to go down this road? Let me tell you what it's going to do to your life. Yeah. Even if it's an okay suit, it's a bear. But anyway, it's resolved itself. So, glad it did.
Me too.
Another great example, we should call this why you should join our must-have policy service. But another great example of policies you need, which many places don't have. And we're going to deal with the city of Pawtucket in Rhode Island. And there's here a settlement. Now, I want to talk about what the settlement is, and then I'll talk about what happened. But the settlement was each of 4 people who's had their rights presumably violated because their lockers were searched without a warrant. Here, the fire chief just said you can search their lockers, and clearly there had been an expectation of privacy, that's the legal phrase, in their lockers. Anyway, they searched their lockers, so they're getting $1,000 a piece, but their lawyer is getting $50,000 or $60,000 paid. So just like under Fair Labor Standards and a lot of harassment and discrimination claims, yeah, the claim may not be worth a lot, but in order to get lawyers to advocate for you to sue, because lawyers would get otherwise a third of $4,000, right? Nobody's going to do it for that. But what they would here, they get their attorney's fees paid, and that's a legislative decision to encourage attorneys to advocate and take on these cases. So here they did. So it's like a $60,000 loss. And it all could have been prevented by one policy. If and we'll do this, and our policy service will send it, but the policy is there's no expectation of privacy in the following, and that's turnout gear lockers and lockers, email, drawers, desks, in your pockets, in your turnout gear, whatever. You've got to make clear, and we can search it at any time, because the test under the Fourth Amendment is whether you've created an expectation of privacy, and allowing them to put the name on their locker, allowing them to put a lock on the locker creates that expectation, and you have to address that in a policy to get around the Fourth Amendment. Should you be able to search an employee's lockers? I think yes, because there's no reason that any employee needs to bring anything other than deodorant and clean socks and those types of things to the firehouse. We've seen long guns stored in lockers, drugs stored in lockers, right? We've seen a lot of things that shouldn't be in the firehouse stored in lockers. And if you create an expectation of privacy where someone can store that in the locker, they're going to bring that stuff in. It doesn't belong in the firehouse, but you need the right policy to prevent this, and they could have prevented it like that.
And that's actually in our first policy. We don't even need a separate policy. We will have a separate policy because it is so important, but it's actually in the first policy that folks will be receiving. So,
right. And that the policy that we're sending out, you're right, it is the first.
Yeah.
And there are more to make even more clear of no expectations in other areas, right? But you want to deal with these.
And by the way, we're not saying that that's what you should have. Okay. If a fire department says we're not going to go in your locker, that's fine too. Sure. But the fire chief and the leaders of the organization need to understand that if you don't have a policy, don't be surprised if courts conclude that your firefighters have a reasonable expectation of privacy in these areas. It can extend to backpacks and closets and bureaus and other things besides just lockers. So,
yep, absolutely. Okay, let's go to Maui. This is kind of along the line of the Connecticut suit. It's getting wrapped up. Maui, as we know, there were horrific wildfires. Lahaina burnt to the ground. There was a number of people, 50 death claims, and as a result, 1.5 million each for those death claims. But there is an allegation that Maui could have done more, that the electric company could have done more and started it and knew about it and should have prevented at least a second fire that happened. I mean, there's a lot of allegations, and what Maui is contemplating, and this came from a memo that was uncovered. There's been no official action yet, but they're talking about a global settlement. Nobody is positive what that means. Global settlement typically means every outstanding claim out there. And so it looks like Maui is trying to globally settle everything just so more money, I presume, can go towards the settlement rather than the litigation and the defense. Whether Maui, the government, has any liability is a different issue. The power company is a whole different issue. They're the ones who are alleged to have started the fire, and I think did start the fire. Anyway, it's good to see that. It's good for the victims. It's good for everybody if that happens, so that they can get on with their lives, or the survivors can get on with their lives now, rather than having this, for the same point we just said, being a plaintiff. goes on a long way, long time. And, there's 50 deaths, not to mention other injuries and loss of property, loss of everything. To force these people to go on forever, just resolve it and let them get on with what's left of their lives.
Yeah, certainly 449 separate lawsuits that were
50, which are
merged.
death claims.
Right. Then they were merged into one, what we call a mass tort litigation. So we'll see how that works out.
And, just to continue our theme, and as we wrap up, this is a very quick session, which is fine. But as we continue, apparently our theme of this show, which is cases that settle, here's our third case that
before we even get into the next case, which is the Rochester, I do want to talk about that because I find, and I don't know if this has to do with court calendars, as certain weeks or certain periods of the year. We seem to see a lot of settlements, and other times we seem to see a lot of certain types of cases decided. But I noticed that in terms of the headlines and the flow of the cases that come into me, and I have a number of services that feed me cases. But there's definitely a consistency in terms of topics sometimes, and you'll see that. Here's how many settlements do we have?
Right.
We have
Three.
Rochester, Maui, Pawtucket. And New Haven. So there's 4 out of the 5 involved the ending or resolution of lawsuits. So
yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's summer break. People would rather work on things, and the judges want to go on break. I have no idea. In my own practice, nothing seems to be settling as quickly as I'd like it to.
I think in real life, but I think maybe court calendars or whatever it may be, there's just periods where things seem to settle at the same time. So.
Yep. And the end of this, we won't get into the whole because it is a long litany of accusations, but the Rochester, New York case that we're talking about is on Juneteenth, which celebrates, right, the end of slavery. Despite the Emancipation Proclamation, this is recognized as, the end of slavery, which is certainly a significant point in time. There was, and this is where, like, the one fact is there were a bunch of people at a house with some apparently allegedly very derogatory June 19th things, like watermelon and a bucket of fried chicken under the happy June 19th day. And a black firefighter was brought by his white captain on an engine while on duty to this party. There's questions whether this is a setup to try to get to the homeowner. Was this right? I don't know. I don't even care anymore because a lot of it's being settled. Basically, the individual who you've got to feel for regardless, the African-American firefighter, right, who was brought to this, he's been on leave. And now he's getting paid for the time he hasn't been there and for the rest of the time. And it ultimately comes, as you correctly pointed out, it's really $521,000 that he's getting future salary over time. But this is the right outcome for him. I'm sorry it ever happened. As between the homeowner, attorney, all this where they claim it's a setup, I don't think that's ending, right? That part I think is still going on. This is just the firefighter portion of the litigation.
Yeah. And you know what I got a kick out of? It's just so typical. And maybe what's happened in the last week with the Trump attempted assassination will kind of calm things down a little bit. But the way that 2 different newspapers, and I put copies of the links to those two media outlets, but one is sort of soft pedaling or trivializing the settlement as it's 150,000. The other one is saying 521. Which is it? And why can't we just be honest about, well, like, why do we have to put a spin that aligns with our political viewpoints on it? Why can't, so anyway, I got a little bit of a kick out of that. And hopefully now the country can, I know there's a lot of talk about bringing things back together. But whether or not people will actually set aside their confirmation bias and their other types of bias and actually be able to achieve that, we'll see.
Yeah, I have my own views of that, but I think crazy is always going to be crazy. It doesn't take much of a spark to ignite crazyism.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't condone Biden's statement of let's put a bullseye on Trump.
Right.
That type of rhetoric should be
I agree.
quelled, but I don't think anyone could teach a class on how do you prevent crazy people from being crazy.
No, but when you have crazy people out there, it's like people who are driving their vehicle in a reckless way. We know that there's people driving, so we need to drive our apparatus in a way that we know there's people like that out there, and we
Stopping
are
at all
driving
intersections.
defensively. And we know that there's people who are mentally unstable out there that maybe on the verge of doing something like this, that we've got to maybe tone down our rhetoric so that we're not encouraging them. Make your point, but don't
Right.
encourage them in terms of being that one thing that's going to push them over the edge. There's no need to. You have your perspective, that's fine, but there's no need to encourage it.
Right. Right. No question. But in any event, so that's that's a heck of
It's
a
a quick,
theme of today,
yeah,
four
quick
out of
week.
five settle.
Quick week. That's good. So, all right. Well, I guess that's going to do it for another edition of Fire Law Roundup. Brad, we'll see you again next week. I'm headed out to Austin, Texas, Georgetown to be specific for the
Very nice.
discipline class, but we'll be back in time for next Monday's class. And yep, we'll see
Everybody
everyone.
check out our musthavepolicies.com, and you can again, we're getting a phenomenal response already, and I'm encouraged, and it's just the beginning.
Yeah,
But
we
if
should
you,
let people know we did say that it's one a month. They're going to
it's
get
multiple
you're going to
policies,
get multiple policies. Yeah, you're
multiple
not going to get one
policies. Yeah.
policy a month. We're not going to overwhelm you, but you're going to get more than one a month. So
Right, right. And some are in depth. Look, I'm sending one out on job performance requirements. We're going to send out soon. And, I decided, well, I could just give you the policy, but I'm giving you a 45-minute video presentation on disability discrimination, why this is important, just so people can understand. So they're going to get so much more from us, right? We may, at any point, give a long lecture or a short description on a long policy, whatever. There's so much that you're getting that addresses everything we talk about week in and week out.
we're studying this stuff. We're
Oh yeah. Okay.
we're on
In real
top of what's
time.
leading to the litigation. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. All right.
All right, Brad. We'll see you, and we'll see everyone again next week.
Take care, everyone.